Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. For everybody who doesn't know, my name is Kerry Wisnosky, and I'm the co-founder and chief executive officer at Boost Innovation Company. Boost's mission is to provide expert advice to the next generation of entrepreneurs and innovators by connecting them with proven leaders in their respective fields. Boost's webinar series aims to create additional resources to achieve this goal. We expect this event to be the first of many insights into how entrepreneurs have tackled problems facing their companies. Visit www.boostinco.com to find your advisor in 90 seconds or less. Also, enjoy 30% off your first advising session with the creation of an account. Today, we are presenting Scaling a Business and Building a Brand, presented by Congressman David Trone, co-founder of Total Wine & More, Mr. Mark Weinberger, former global CEO of Ernst & Young, and Mr. Kerry Wisnosky, co-founder and principal owner of Millennium Engineering and Integration Company. This webinar will be moderated by Ms. Claudia Meir. Claudia earned her bachelor's degree from the University of Pennsylvania and her master's in international finance and management from Harvard University. She's a Boost Innovation Company advisor, as well as the chief investment officer and chief financial officer of Alpha Structure, a venture co-owned by the Carlyle Group and Schneider Electric, and focused on developing clean energy projects throughout North America. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your Zoom control panel. Claudia will bring them up during the presentation, and we will also have time for them for questions at the end. Claudia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Wyatt. I'm honored to introduce to you today three esteemed panelists who started successful businesses. First, let me introduce Congressman David Trone, who was elected in 2018 to serve Maryland's 6th Congressional District. He serves on the Education and Labor, Foreign Affairs, and Joint Economic Committees, where he's fighting to make progress on pivotal issues, including the opioid epidemic, criminal justice reform, and funding for mental health research. Congressman Trone grew up on a chicken and hog farm. Though the family lost the farm to bankruptcy, through student loans, he was able to attend college at Furman University, where he earned a bachelor's degree. He then went on to earn his MBA from the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. David and his brother Robert began their journey to create the Total Wine & More superstore business in 1984 when they opened 2 wine stores in Delaware. Over the years, the brothers added a greater selection of fine wines, spirits, and beers, and expanded into many other states. Total Wine & More is now the largest independent alcoholic beverage retailer in the country, with more than 200 stores and 9,000 employees nationwide. Next, I'd like to introduce Mark Weinberger. Mark served for nearly 8 years as global chairman and CEO of EY, the global accounting and consulting firm, retiring at the end of 2019. Mark joined EY 4 times during his career, twice leaving to serve US Presidents Bush and Clinton, once to work in the US Senate on tax policy and tax reform, and once to start his own business, Washington Counsel PC, a Washington, D.C.-based law and legislative advisory firm that eventually merged into EY. Under Mark's leadership, EY completed over 120 acquisitions and grew in areas such as cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and data analytics. Mark received his BA from Emory, a JD MBA from Case Western Reserve, and a Master's of Law in Taxation from Georgetown University. Last, I'd like to introduce Kerry Wisnosky. Kerry has over 30 years of experience in engineering and executive leadership of aerospace, defense, and civil systems. Kerry co-founded Millennium Engineering and serves as the company's chief executive officer, chief operations officer, and principal engineer, leading Millennium into new Department of Defense and civilian markets. He has authored and presented numerous technical papers at national and international conferences and aerospace seminars. Prior to founding Millennium Engineering, which has about 900 employees and $300 million in annual revenue, Kerry worked for Standard Missile Company, a Raytheon Hughes joint venture, Answer, General Electric, the Naval Surface Warfare Center, and Martin Marietta. Kerry has a MS in Mechanical Engineering and Applied Mechanics from the University of Pennsylvania, a BS in Aerospace Engineering from the University of Maryland, and currently serves on Maryland's Engineering Advisory Board. I'd like to spend the next few minutes asking our panelists some questions and then see, as Wyatt mentioned, if the audience has some additional questions. The first question I'd like to direct to all three of you, starting with David, then Mark, and then Kerry. Scaling a business involves numerous milestones. What are three key elements you focused on when growing your company?
Well, first of all, Claudia, thanks for having us. Thanks for doing this. And Wyatt, it's great here to be able to help you out. And, you know, I'm sure the other panelists, Kerry and Mark, feel the same way. It's great to work with young entrepreneurs and try and help them on their journey, because we all had some folks that helped us, you know, in our journeys. I think the biggest thing is we all started different kind of businesses. Mine was very much down and dirty retail. So with one small store in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, I think the things that really helped me, first of all, would be is understanding the business inside out, all details, all jobs. So you really got to know your business. You can't sit at 30,000 feet when you're small, and you got to realize you're doing a lot of things that the typical Wharton MBA might never do, but you're doing those things. You're making the coffee, you're answering the phone, you're going over to FedEx, whatever it takes to get the business started. So you've got to have no ego about this and just be willing to get in and get dirty. The other piece will be get out of your comfort zone. All of us love certain areas. Maybe we love marketing or IT, but you know, we got to get where we're not comfortable so we can learn about a lot of other areas, because as a CEO and a founder, you know, we've got to become a generalist, and being a specialist won't work long-term to run a company and really take it where you might want it to go. Those would be some good starting points for you.
Terrific, thank you. Mark, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, Claudia, thank you so much. And like David, Wyatt, and team, I want to congratulate you all. What an outstanding things to do. Happy to be part of it. And Claudia, after listening to your introductions, I can't wait to hear what we have to say. I mean, it's incredible. It sounds like we did. It doesn't resemble much, but it sounds great. Anyway, like David, I mean, I think three quick things. First and foremost, it sounds trite. It's not the most, to me, it's the most important thing you have to do. Really identify and articulate your purpose. Because you may understand it as a founder, but when you have to get a team behind you, you have to get clients to understand what it is. You got to decide day in and day out what to do and not do. That will be your North Star. So I would really spend time initially understanding who you want to be and where you want to go, what your purpose is, why you exist other than making money. And that should be something that will serve you well throughout every single element of your business as you grow. The second is that attracting that team around you. There's nothing more important and nothing more reflects on you than the colleagues and coworkers that you're building your business with. And you know, they are your ambassadors and you're their ambassador. And so you want to make sure you have the same values to build value. And if you don't have the same values, it's going to cause conflict down the road. So the second real milestone for me was deciding who shared my passion. And this is when Claudia mentioned Washington Council. Who did I want to bring with me? Who did I want to represent me? Who did I want to go to clients with? And that team becomes incredibly important. We'll talk more later. It's got to be a pretty diverse team too, cognitively diverse, because you're going to learn a lot from your team members and you pick the right ones. And then lastly, what I learned, you know, I worked for EY, as Claudia mentioned a lot. When you work for EY, 300,000 people in 150 countries, big brand name, you get invited to a lot of things. You may not win all your pitches, but you get invited to a lot. When you start your own company and you're brand new, you don't get invited. You got to invite yourself. And so you got to build your brand. And so that third thing is really spending time to think about your brand. And your brand will drive your revenues. It's not the other way around. When you mentioned milestones, Claudia, in your question, so many people jump to dollars. Remember, numbers are results of what you do. They're not what you do. And so focusing on that brand and the value you bring is the third thing that I think we had to get really clear for us to start to scale. Kerry, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And likewise, I appreciate the opportunity to share a perspective this afternoon. And particularly, I'm honored to be with David and Mark. I mean, there's like two well-established leaders in their field and then myself. But for what it's worth, I'm going to come at it from a little more of an analytical engineering perspective. But really taking off of what Mark said about the three things I've really held a lot of value as I was growing my business is the first one was what I call quality versus quantity. Mark called it sales or revenue versus brand. But the point of this is, even from the beginning of society and even up to today, everyone's always talking about the most valued business, the largest enterprise, the most number of patents that somebody puts out. And those things are important. They're important for a reason, but they're only can be realized if you stay to the quality of what your brand is. So the first thing I really want to emphasize is the importance of quality. And whatever you decide to do in your business, please don't ever consider jeopardizing that at the other expense. The second thing, when I was starting my company, there was a guy who put a book out, Jeffrey Gittelmore, I think his name was. It was along the lines of customer satisfaction is worthless. Customer loyalty is priceless. And the point of that is, don't get enamored with satisfaction. I mean, just think about as we were growing up, satisfaction is you're a C. That's it. You just made it. You want customers who emphatically, when they have a problem or they think of your company as a solution. So customer loyalty, building that quality, providing it to your customer versus just getting focused on satisfying the customer is what I consider the second thing we've really focused on. And the third, and everyone's already touched on this, is our employees. It's now, yeah, you bring in employees and you're growing a business, you have to tune your interest to, you have to understand what their interests are. You have to professionally develop them, you have to send them to school, you have to get them training. But what we did is we paid attention to what was important to them. And what you find out is their spouses, their significant others, their family, their communities, those type of things, when you pay attention and listen to your employees and you try to be responsive to what their overall needs, that helps you grow. Because now all of a sudden, they're not just coming to work to check a box. They're thinking of you as really caring about them and they'll be more engaged. Thank you. That's my third.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Those are all great answers. Next question I'd like to direct to all three of you, and whichever one of you would like to answer, or more than one. Executive coach Marshall Goldsmith famously said, "What got you here won't get you there," referring to the many inflection points when growing a business that require a change in approach. Can you share one or two of your inflection points? What caused them and what you changed in your business? I'll throw it out to the group, see who would like to respond.
I'm happy to go, Kerry. I think the big point is I want to reiterate what Kerry said a second ago, and that is that satisfied customers means nothing. And there's a book I read many, many years ago, and it talked about the difference between satisfied and highly satisfied. And that highly satisfied, if we can get them there, that's when they become sticky. And they're going to be with us for a long, long time. And your customer lifetime value, your CLV, is going to multiply, consistently. So that's really, really the key. And of course, people are always the key. But the inflection points you hit are the people that got you where you are, and the technology that got you where you are, and the processes. When you go from 100 million to 500 million to 2 billion to 5 billion, as we have, those numbers require a whole different set of people, technologies, processes, different benchmarks you're looking at. So you've got to be willing to adjust. And this guy might have been an awesome CFO at 100 million, but he's not going to get you to $1 billion. So you've got to be looking way out ahead as you're moving up, as you're scaling quickly. Mark, Kerry?
I'll offer one quick thing, Kerry, picking up on what David did, then turn right to you if that's okay. Because I couldn't agree more with what David said. The inflection point, Claudia, for me, would have been when you go from the value you had was doing to the value you have now is empowering and enabling. Mm-hmm. And that is an inflection point for every leader, because especially when you're young, it's, how much hours you charge, how much sales you make. It's the number of answers that you provide to people to get things done. As you grow and lead a business and scale, and as an owner, you can't possibly do that and still have the vision and leadership you need to have. So now it's not having the answers, it's asking the right questions. And that is a big change. And some people make it, some people don't. As David said, I would say you have to really understand the people you work with and those who could take you on the journey and make that transition, and those who just stay where they are and continue to be exceptional doers, which are a really important part of the organization as well. So that inflection point, recognizing that you're changing from giving the answers to asking the questions, is a huge, I think, mind shift.
Great. No, that's a really great point. Thank you. And Kerry, is there anything you'd like to add?
I'll just add, relative to an inflection point, again, being engineers, so an inflection point is really the second derivative of a calculus solution. And so what it really, from an aerospace standpoint, the way we think about it is it's a change of direction, a change of speed, or change of altitude that you need to go from where you're at to.
Ready. I'll let you know when we.
Oh, okay. So for us, I would consider our inflection point was when we started our business, we hired a bunch of our friends and family, just like anybody else would. And while I have a few quality family, I had a lot of high quality friends. And so, but at some point, you've done saturating that market as well. But we needed to instill our quality as we were growing our business. So a big inflection point for us was taking the time to invest in, as David just mentioned, the future. We invested in quality standards in what's called ISO 9000. It's a big international standard for developing products. We invested in quality standards in software, CMMI, which is a big capability matrix that these large multi-billion, billions of dollar companies have to put us in a level playing field with these other type of companies. So taking the time to invest, codify, get certified, it makes a huge difference to your customers as you grow. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. So the third question I wanted to ask is kind of the natural outgrowth of all that we've talked about in scaling a business, which is challenges. What would you say, and I'll ask this of all three of you to comment, what would you say was the biggest challenge you faced when trying to scale your business, and how did you overcome it?
And the biggest issue always, and we always go back to the same thing, and that's your team members. I mean, how you get the right team members that share your vision, and so we all move together and be willing to say, this team member's not working out, try to move them forward, try and make them better, but then at some point, we've got to say, they'll be happier somewhere else. And too often we hang on to a team member that just can't do the job and it drags everybody else down. So we got to make those type of leadership decisions. And back to touch a minute ago about Mark's point, doing to power and enabling. I was thinking about, what I've done the last decade, and it's really, I'm a teacher, I'm a coach. And everywhere I go, I'm teaching people what we do, but mostly always teach them the why, because people love to be respected, and we should respect all of our team. And when they understand why we do things, and then we ask them, what can we do better? And then that really brings them in to part of the coherence of leadership that we need. So we've got to, engage our people and listen to them. And if we don't love the idea, but it's okay, do it, because we want to use their ideas, do their ideas, or they won't bring ideas forth. And we've got to have new ideas, embrace change, love change. That's the only way we'll continually stay at the top over the decades.
Great, thank you. Mark, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, I'll give one quick example. I think, and it goes to something Kerry said in his first answer, which is quality, but I liken it to the importance of execution. What's really hard to do when you're trying to grow, take risks, do new things, travel to get new clients and scale, is to never lose sight of the fact that your existing clients are the most important thing, and you can't ever take it for granted. It takes a lifetime to make a reputation. You can lose it in a minute. And so balancing that urge to grow a new business with not losing sight of running and managing your existing business, and as David said, putting the right team in place so you could change your priorities, is something to me that is a real challenge, especially for a new young leader who's used to doing everything. And so I think that's one challenge. There's a lot more, but I'll turn it over to you, Kerry.
I guess I would sort of end this topic for now by saying, like, the biggest challenge for us was when we started our company. Again, a lot of people who thought they had a good engineering background, were doing really neat things for our customers. And so we were generally what we call in our business subcontractors or suppliers. There were big, large prime contractors, and we were the subcontractors underneath them. And so what we found over time is when the going got tough, the prime contractors, they controlled the solution. And you know who's the first one to feel the pain? It's the suppliers and subcontractors. So we had a strategy that said, we need to be able to go out and compete and win large contracts so that we could become prime contractors. And that was a big transition curve of getting different types of people, as David and Mark have mentioned, not just engineers. People knew how to do the whole phase of capturing and growing and cultivating new relationships and the details of necessary professional proposals. We went from when we started, obviously we were zero prime to 100% subcontracted. Today, 80% of our business, we're the prime contractors, and we still have some roles as subcontractors, but it's a huge difference in terms of the growth and our ability to control and the destiny in the future.
Great, thank you. Well, I'd like to take actually one of the questions that came in from the audience now, and I'd throw this out to all three of you again. Liz asked, can any of you speak to restarting your brand after Chapter 11? Many people view Chapter 11 as failure, but it can be a very smart business decision and turning point. Would any of you like to comment on that?
I don't have experience in the area, I must say. So I do, honestly, I do think, knowing when you're in a position you have to accept Chapter 11, you absolutely can reorganize and come out and save jobs and save people and continue to serve your clients. So there's a lot of value to that. You don't take it lightly because it is something that your creditors and others will certainly be aware of. But I think being aware enough and talking to the right advisors to understand when to do that is probably one of the most important decisions you have to make. But I've not been through it personally.
Mm-hmm. It's an opportunity to restructure. So certainly that's an important facet of it if that's a way to breathe life back into the business. David, is there anything you'd want to comment on that?
Just not where I want to be. So
yeah.
Chance to restart again, refocus, realign your team. But the whole key is if you're thinking long term, you'll be making the right decisions. You're not going to end up in an 11 situation.
Great. So looking back on when you began your careers or your business, what do you wish you had known then that you know now?
Well, I'll start off on that if it's okay.
Sure.
So what I wish I'd known then that I know now is that failure is an option. Think about that. Failure is an option. Now, I want to put it in context of given that you continue on and persevere. I'm not a fan of failure at the expense of that's the end. I want to share a quick story. I'll give you the executive version. When I was younger, we were building a rocket, and everything's always about cost. And so we leased an Indian reservation in Arizona, and we went out and we fired this static rocket motor. And what happened was the rocket blew up, which was bad enough, but we couldn't put out all the fire in the Indian reservation with just the fire extinguisher we had. We had to go grovel with the chief on the reservation and get their truck. Okay, that was bad enough. We had the customer come out to our place in Arizona a couple days later and tell us, you guys are not qualified to build this rocket motor. And we wondered why he said that. It was 115 degrees and we were all wearing ties and a jacket. And he said simply, if any group of people would wear a jacket in temperatures like this, they're not the kind of people that can come up with our solution. By the way, that person went on to be the NASA administrator under Secretary of Defense. Very, very successful person. Fast forward to today, we got that rocket motor working in a couple of years. It went into outer space, did exactly what it is. And if you went out to the Smithsonian near Dulles, you would see a piece of that rocket on display as something that first time ever accomplished. But I could tell you, when that was going on, I thought my career was over and I thought we had failed. And so my point of all this is failure can be a very great learning experience if you have the perseverance to go with it.
Great.
Thank you.
I have one here, Claudia, too, just to throw out. I think I learned this as much at my EY experience as when I started the other company. And it took me a while to understand it. And I think it's probably one of the most valuable things, so I'll share it, which is it doesn't matter what you say, it matters what people hear. And all when I was growing up and I was in sales in a professional service firm, you used to love, and to get ahead, you wanted everyone to think you were really smart. But your clients, and frankly, your coworkers, really don't care how smart you are. They care whether you're solving a problem that they have. They care about whether they're hearing something that either it as a coworker, as David said when he started off in his comments, that you care about them, that you understand, and that'll open their ears more. And I think, what I wish I knew early on, I'm listening to Kerry, to David, to you and your comments, and I learn when I'm listening. But when I'm talking, I don't learn anything. And so I think it's really important that you understand it's okay, one, not to know everything, and you can admit that, because when you're not authentic, people find out. But most importantly, you have to really listen to the customer and really understand the client and ask questions and not be afraid to ask them, because that's the only way you'll solve their problem, as opposed to just telling them what you could sell, which may make you sound really smart and not fit any of their needs. And so that's a real challenge for young people who want to show how smart they are. But I think it's really important. Listen, don't always talk, and make sure you're really thinking about what they're hearing, not what you want them to know.
No, it's great advice. Go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
No, two phenomenal pieces of advice there. And Mark is so right. It's the old joke about one mouth and two ears. And so many young folks want to tell you how damn smart they are. And they want to monopolize every meeting, have their hand up with every rhetorical question, and sit back, listen, and contribute when you have something that's real to contribute to the discussion. And of course, to Kerry's point on failure, I mean, failure is so important. I mean, we try and encourage failure, and we judge people on failure, because if they haven't failed, they aren't taking a risk and punching the ceiling. So they've got to have failure. Then they can explain what they failed, why they failed, and what they learned. So absolutely crucial to have failure and to embrace it and actually encourage it. And the other piece I didn't know early on was the importance of running to the problem. And sometimes you kind of let the problem get brown like lettuce, but that's never going to work. So when you see a problem, you want to jump in, hit it head on. Don't waste a second on it, and bring your expertise, your intelligence to resolve it. And of course, embrace conflict. The more conflict we have, the better, because we're going to come up with a better solution at the end of the day.
Absolutely. No, I think that's all great advice. And I would just add to that the adage of failing fast. It's important to fail, and it's important to fail fast so that you can pick yourself up and move on to the next one. So that's great. Thank you. Next question is, what were or are critical values you consider key to your business success? And related to that question is, how did you instill them throughout your organization as you grew? Maybe we'll start with Mark, since we've started with the others first.
Sure. I mean, when I had, there's a famous author, and actually his father was a famous author, Steve Covey. You may have heard of him. Speed of Trust, it's called. And he goes, and I had him come in to speak to my global management team at EY. Did a phenomenal job. And I think trust is probably the most important ingredient for any team to have, because when you don't trust each other, then you're not working to act most efficiently. You're second guessing, you're slowing down, you don't have joint and shared goals, and you don't produce as well. So to me, it's absolutely crucial that you build a team that has trust. I also think that one of the values at EY was, as simple as it is, do the right thing. And if you think about that and you back it up every day and you do the right thing, and you can say why it was the right thing, even if you get it wrong, failure's okay. But if you did it for the wrong reasons, you did the wrong thing, somehow failure's not okay. So that is a really important value. And the third, there's more, but the third I'll leave you with, for me, is courage to lead. That it really takes courage to lead. It's a little easier to follow. But if you really want to own your own, scale your own business, grow your own business, and win, you have to have courage. It doesn't mean you make stupid decisions. where you take informed, courageous steps.
Great. Would anyone else like to add anything? Or should we move to the next question from the audience? So we have a question from the audience. Are there any recommendations you can provide for raising essential money pre-revenue?
Friends and family.
Yeah, well, that's something we've never done. We realize if you raise money, you give up shares. So we've maintained 100% shares.
Kerry, did you raise any outside capital?
Not with Millennium. We kind of did the sweat and equity thing that David talked about, but Mark just made his comment. It's a very real one, and it's basically, I have been involved in a number of businesses that have raised financing, and the preponderance approach when it's getting off the ground is in fact family and friends. You're in a position where it's difficult to get capacity from a bank because you're too new. Unless, I mean, some of the people have benefited through the Small Business Administration. Even in today's world, they're still open for business. And I've seen companies be successful with that. But overall, it's having a good, as someone who's invested in some of these friends and family ventures over time, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, is the importance of having a solid business plan. The greatest ideals in the world go nowhere without a plan. So.
Great. No, absolutely true.
Go ahead, Mark.
Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
No, I really can't. I think the other options, of course, are you can go for grants, you can get in-kind contributions from universities who put together entrepreneur labs and will give you talent and resources, but to actually go out and raise dollars, you either got to dilute yourself and you got to have someone who blindly believes in you if you have no revenue. And that would mean you'd have to have a social problem that you've identified so clearly that only you could fix. And so that's hard, but you'd have to be able to really convince people of that.
Excuse me, I do have one more thing to put on the table. Not sure in the context of what somebody's asking, but I have seen, I mean, one of the views in my world is the government is a great capital venturist. They have a very, very, billions of dollars they put into small business innovative research. So if you're talking about something that's innovated in the research side, I've seen numerous people. In fact, when we started our company, when you were asking earlier, we'd write small business innovative researchers proposals to the government, and they have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and you can get hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars that path. So that is, not sure what the context is.
Well, actually, Kerry, maybe this question's next best directed to you. Is from the audience, they asked, how does a small business get started with doing government contracting work?
Okay, so a little funny story. The way to get started is obviously you have to incorporate, have your business, and then it's basically you're going identify a target, a market of opportunity that in our world, we think of the business development paradigm as a quad chart. There's what we call existing capability, existing customers. And that's what you know well, as David talked about that. You have to know something well, and you have to have some relationship with a customer. And then the other extreme, quad 4, is new capability, new customers. And what we would encourage small businesses, new businesses, the government, every government agency out there, and David knows this even in Congress, they have small business administrations. It's required by law that their doors are open to encourage small businesses to grow. So you can go in and talk to them, and they'll tell you who are the companies, who are the people in there, and they'll give you some marching orders. But whoever it is, I'm happy to talk to them offline. They shoot an email to me. I'm happy to talk to them more details about it.
Thank you. We'll make sure to pass on their contact information. One other question from the audience is, how did you go about building a team around you? What qualities did you look for in an employee when building your team?
People who were smarter than me, and it wasn't hard to find them, but I'm serious about this. I mean, I am, believe it or not, ran a $40 billion professional service firm that focuses on financials. I'm not a finance guy. So I wanted somebody who could really run the numbers and really do things I knew I couldn't do. I wanted a diverse skill set who thought about things differently, because, you know, it's the old adage that when airbags were first invented for automobiles, incredible safety device, Kerry, you probably know this story, they actually maimed women and small children. Because why? Because all the engineers who sat around the table and designed them were men and had bigger body structures, and they didn't think about how it would affect them. And so the more people who think about things differently around the table, the better your product will be from a quality standpoint, more sustainable, and you'll probably get it right quicker. So a very diverse group with different cognitive skill sets, meaning that they have different strengths and different sector knowledge, different functional knowledge, was incredibly important. And the one thing, of course, that mattered most was chemistry. They also had to have chemistry, the values we talked about before with integrity and trust, and fit in with the whole team. You could be the smartest person in the world, but if you only sat in your office and did your work and couldn't work with the team and empower and enable, you couldn't fit on our team. So you have to look at all those things and find the right people.
Quite simply said on that one is amen. Totally on track. You stole all my ideas. Smart attitude.
Good, David. Thank you.
Diversity of how we look at things. I mean, absolutely perfect. Thank you.
Terrific. Well, here's one more question. Clearly this year, 2020, is uncharted territory for many people and businesses, and frankly, to our society as a whole. How can young companies be responsible to their employees, customers, products, and communities during these demanding times? What are the risks involved, and how would you propose that they mitigate them? David, you want to take that one first?
Okay, we'll give it a shot. Certainly, it's remarkable times, and it's affecting businesses in so many different ways. And at retail, you know, we're on the front lines. So the company that, you know, I used to run, they have, you know, put in immediately really strong focus on the team members. So we've got to focus on our team being safe, and then focus on the customer being safe. So you've got to establish that day one, that everything revolves around safety. So the company, they put in, as soon as we had any exposure at all to anybody that possibly could have had COVID, no matter the positive or not, and 90% never got it or more, the company set up a policy to send them home 2 weeks, full pay, regardless of position, to isolate. And people respected that. And that was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of folks, very few who got COVID, but someone they had been with were exposed. And then every time someone got COVID, the company went back and we traced, and found out all the people that they had been exposure with using cameras throughout the store. So you could see who hugged who was together for 10 minutes or 1 minute, and where there could have been exposure. And then we put those people and sent them home. You know, with pay, because if people don't get paid, they're going to try and come to work, and they're going to make the rest of us sick. So we want everybody to be home, isolate, and feel good about that, and put that first. Then, of course, moved immediately into gloves, masks, cleaning, distancing, huge signage throughout the stores. And actually, Total Wine was recognized by Time Magazine as the most safe COVID retailer in the country. We got that job as it came in first. And the key was an obsession early on, because everyone realized this is not going to go away, and it is deadly. And if we set the tone with our employees, set the tone with our team and our customer, everyone's going to respect that, and we'll pull together and pull through it.
Great. Fantastic work.
Yeah,
Mark, Kerry, would you like to add? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. I would say, you know, I think while nothing you've ever done in your career could prepare you for this moment, on the other hand, everything you've done for your career prepared you for this moment. And when I say that, I mean, resilient companies have certain characteristics. And it's true of those who went through 9/11 and made it through the financial crisis that are going through this. And there are things like David talked about. You care about your stakeholders, not just your investors. You care about all of them, because you're gonna need them to get through this. You're gonna need your suppliers. You're gonna need your communities. You're gonna need the government, and you can't just come to them if you were just focusing on your shareholders for the last 10 years and you didn't care about all those things. Secondly, you need to have a long-term view. You have to separate the signal from the noise. And if you're building a business that is based on good fundamentals for the long term, you're going to be better off than if you're trying to manage each quarter to get to where you need to be to hit some targets. And so, I give you a great example. Right now, nobody would invest in the emerging markets if you had read the newspapers today and saw how disrupted India is. China's falling apart. It's coming back now to some degree. South America is terrible. Yet 90% of everyone alive under the age of 30 lives in an emerging market. Over 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 of the world's biggest 500 companies, 50 were from an emerging market. Today, it's nearly 200. It'll be over half of them 10 years from now. If you decided, based on what you read in the newspaper, to pull everything into one country, long term, you'd be making a huge mistake because you're missing the direction signal from all the noise you're seeing today. And I go on and on about this. So I think what I would say is the things that make a great company: resiliency, caring about your stakeholders, thinking long term, having great values and brand will get you through this. And that's what you need in good times and bad.
Great. Kerry?
Yeah, I just had a couple of little points, and they pretty much echo what was already talked about, but a little bit of the spin. One of the things that we found successful from when we started our company, and you probably got it by listening to David and Mark, is for what it's worth, the three folks you're talking to today are generally not in the business of being a highly leveraged, highly debt-driven type company. And so one of the fundamental things that have been advantageous to all of us, I say the three of us, I presume, is not taking on a lot of debt that you don't need. When you are a successful company, there are no shortage of friends that want to give you money to help you do things. And that's not when you want it. You want it so when these tough times come up, you can take care of your employees. You can work with your customers to understand what their needs are and be responsive. And then I really want to emphasize that. Having a conservative approach of what your financial needs are will help you when these things come, because they are coming. And there will be more of these type of things in the future. The second one is a little variation of the theme here. When you were just talking about today's world, there's also what I've learned over this year in our company is we're a very geographically dispersed company. Our employees in Florida, they think about things different than our employees in Colorado or the ones in New Mexico or ones in California. So we don't presume that we can sit here in headquarters and define what's important to them and what they really need to help them get through whatever their challenges are. Some of them are things like civil rights and how they think about it. Some are the military and how they're being taken care of in Alabama. And so what we try to do is let each of those groups define their own solution. And then it's easy for us to provide financial support and encouragement, but letting the people that know most about their problems speak for their problems, listening is has turned out to be very effective for us.
Great. Well, thank you all. And you all mentioned a lot about brand in your comments throughout. So if you're going about trying to build a brand in this new world, what are some of the first steps you would want to implement to move forward with your idea or product?
Well, I'll offer up. I mean, for me, again, at EY, we didn't make engineering products, engines, motors. We didn't produce distilleries. All we had were people. So our ambassadors were our people. And so every day, every night, when people leave the organization, that is your brand. They go out into the community. They are good people or bad people. They contribute to society or they take from it. And so I think the people you associate with, your members of your employees, is the first step in building a brand. You got to have good people inside. Second, the clients you choose to work with. I had a very strict, in my law business, if you chose to take on a very controversial case that you could make a lot of money on, that was not necessarily something that others that would want to hire you if you worked on those issues, you got to consider that. So you look at the quality of your clients. That adds to your brand quite a bit as well. The quality of your people inside, the quality of your clients. And then third, we've all talked about the execution, never letting a client down, and they're going to be your best resource. The best client opportunity comes from an existing client or a referral from an existing client.
So I think I'd add on that is really understand in retail, what your brand stands for. And I recall back when I built the first store, 1984, I had on my business card, price and selection. And that's what our business stood for. Always a great price, the biggest selection in the United States, and service. Over time, that morphed in that service and having experiential retailing, because just price, you'll die on it. You can't just become commoditized. That'll be it. You still got to have the best price. You got to go neck to neck with Costco. You can't give them an inch. But at the same time, when you augment that with selection, and then people, our most valuable asset, and I say this all the time, I say, what do you guys think is our most valuable asset? And they look at me and I say, you, of course, you're the most valuable asset because you represent who we are. You're our brand, and you make our retailing experience a real experience with knowledgeable service, wine tastings, classrooms, virtual tastings, excellence in beer knowledge, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the only way you're going to continue to make it in retail today in the world of Amazon. You got no chance unless you're experiential in your retailing philosophy.
Great. Well, we have one more question from the audience, and then I have one final question. So I hope you can bear with us for just two more. From the audience, we were asked if you could talk about gaining customers through word of mouth versus spending money on marketing and advertising. Do you believe that gaining customers through word of mouth are more valuable in terms of customer retention and long-term customer relationships?
We're all going to be in the exact same place on this one. I mean, categorically, the best customer we'll ever get is from word of mouth. I mean, when you have a customer that walks out and just had that highly satisfied experience, sticky customer, they're going to tell folks after folks after folks, and they're going to be believed because they're relatives, their coworkers, their neighbors, and there are ambassadors. So I used to talk about it as creating disciples, through every city and the 60 or so cities of the United States, that we operate in, how we have those disciples, customer ambassadors, and that is the best way and the most efficient way, cost-wise, to build your business. But of course, paradoxically, one bad customer, it's a disaster. And small anecdote on that is the first 20-some years, every single customer complaint by letter, by phone, by email, I took personally, every single one. So that's thousands of customer complaints that I dealt with all myself, nobody else assigned to it. It's because we want to turn that customer, into a true believer. And you can take 90, 95% of those problems that come in. And when you're done, explain to them what happened, apologizing, groveling, offering solutions, they're back and saying, Mr. Trone, I apologize for taking up your time. I will always shop at Total Wine, and I can't wait to tell my friends how you took the time to deal with my issue. And so I think it's really key to, again, go to the problems and bring your expertise and your passion to help fix them.
Terrific. Mark or Kerry, do you want to add anything?
David nailed it. The only thing I would say is that there is a place for marketing and eyeballs, and that's to get people's attention. But the question was, how do you get customers? And it goes to what David said. Once you get their attention, you only get the customers from people who could not be an advertisement, but speak from the heart. And so I think they're two different things.
Kerry?
I think they've pretty much said. I would be just repeating. So.
Okay, great. Well, one last question, and it goes to the heart of what really Boost is all about. If you were to think about through your career and through building your business, how did key advisors or mentors really help you build your business, and what areas were they the most helpful?
So I'll start off. When we started our company, we had an advisor who was a Gulf oil executive. We were just starting our company. That he was on the board because a little bit of that, but he also, interesting enough, was a paratrooper during D-Day and invasion of Normandy. And his boss has a quote: "In preparing for battle, I've always found the plans are useless, but planning is indispensable." Think about that. In preparing for battle, I've always found that plans are useless, but the planning is indispensable. Now, this was an Army paratrooper.
Yep.
His boss was Dwight Eisenhower. And the whole point of that, when he told us that at our very first board meeting, was put your plan together. The details of it are going to change, but the preparation that's necessary will win the day. 5 years later, we had a board meeting. He was still with us. And our plan was to grow just like anybody else, 5 years, $25 million. And we were literally like $25.5 million. But what was interesting is the customers we had identified and the type of capability we were doing, you know, we were probably off by 50% in both areas. But the fact that we had defined this plan and put it out was critical to help us understand how to get a business off the ground. And then the only other thing that was noteworthy to me about advisors, well, I mean, there's plenty of them, but when I talked about us growing, learning how to go compete against the big boys, like now we got to go out and compete against Northrop Grumman, Orbital Sciences, and Lockheed Martin. And we win some of those fights, not all of them. You get no points in our business for second place, but we went and hired some of those seasoned people from those companies who've been through the process of building the machine to go out and capture new work. So we understood at some point, Mark said, you have to go out and grow new business. And so getting someone who was very professional, nothing to do with engineering, everything about capturing a new customer's attention and what you need to do to prepare a winning proposal, that was critical to us. So those were two things: planning and good business development people.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'll just, yeah, quick. I'll let David bring it home with the conclusion here. I would say mentoring is incredibly important. Certainly, opening doors, building bridges for you, sharing their experience, answering questions, being a sounding board, all great. But a mentoring relationship is a two-way street, and we're all the CEOs of our own life, and we've got to run our own life. And what I found incredibly interesting about my mentors, and I have lots of different ones, and including, you know, David and Kerry, I watch the way they operate. What your mentors should do for you is you see what they do that makes them successful. Why do you respect them? And you emulate it. You know, do they respect everyone when they talk to, you know, my dad was my plumber in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and, you know, wouldn't know anything about professional life or being in Washington, D.C. or anything I did. But whenever he went into an elevator, he would talk to the elevator person and make them feel like the biggest person in the world. I learned from that how that made those people feel, right? So your mentor could be anywhere and everything. I would say it's really important for you to look at your mentors, not as a whole person, because your mentor's probably not perfect either, but pick up the traits you like. And frankly, from a lot of people, you can see the things you don't like, and don't be like that. Don't run your business the way some of the others. And I think you have responsibility for that. And so a mentor, a lot of people view a mentor as taking care of you. A mentor is a relationship that's a two-way street, in my view.
Mark and Kerry absolutely nailed it. Mentorship is just so absolutely crucial. We set it up, you know, decades ago from the board, the whole way down. It's got to go up and down the vertical chains of command. We got to cross silos, or we'll get stuck in those silos, and that's a disaster. You know, we can't let that happen. And the point about learning from others, that just, you see them do something and you say, that was just wrong. And you say, I will never do that. And, you know, so learn the good and the bad, but steal all their ideas and throw out the other ones with the bathwater. But learning and listening, and that's back to the listening point that Mark made earlier, is so crucial. I just, all my life, have soaked up information from people that were older than me, and they saw that I respected them. I was curious as hell about everything they did. Curiosity, one of the most important traits ever of a CEO. Ask lots of questions about what you don't understand, and there's no question that's a dumb question. They're all good questions, because then you'll get to the bottom of it and come up with full understanding as a generalist needs to be to run everything. Thank you.
Terrific. Well, that's a great way to end our session today. I think that clearly speaking to the value of mentors and the kind of advisory relationship that can be obtained through a Boost relationship and the key advisors that Boost offers is really pivotal to growing a business. I want to thank all three of you for your great insights today. It's really been an honor for me to be able to moderate this session. And now I'd like to turn it back over to Wyatt.
Thanks, Claudia. From all of us at Boost, we'd like to thank Congressman Trone, Mr. Mark Weinberger, and Mr. Kerry Wisnosky for their time today. We'd also like to thank Ms. Claudia Meir for being a phenomenal moderator. Thank you everyone for attending this webinar by Boost Innovation Company. As a reminder, your first advising appointment is 30% off with creation of a Boost account to celebrate the company's launch. Look through Boost's portfolio of expert advisors at www.boostinco.com. We appreciate you being here. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Good luck, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you. Very excellent job, Claudia. Appreciate
Thank
Good job, Wyatt.
it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kerry, Claudia, Wyatt. Good job, buddy. Take care.
Thanks.